Tony, to me, this real estate crisis, and especially the crisis within some of the big developers you've mentioned, Evergrande and Country Gardens, seems almost designed by the CCP in China via this three red lines policy implemented in August 2020. So do you agree with me that it is a crisis designed by the Politburo by the end of the day? And if so, where does it leave us in terms of hopes for a big stimulus package for the real estate sector?
Yeah, I don't think it's designed by them because it makes them look like like economic planning failures. So, of course, at the edges, some things may be designed, and certainly there's definitely been a lot of thinking about how to kind of deflate the real estate bubble and the real estate expectations. I can guarantee you that there have been tens of thousands of hours burned on trying to figure out how to steer this thing. But I don't necessarily think that kind of the crash has been intentionally designed. I think the reaction is probably what's been more designed and how to kind of steer things down, because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for these high-level committees and mid-level bureaucrats and economic planners for this stuff to happen. So, nobody wants. So I'll give you an example. In July of 2015, when we saw Chinese stock markets crash, okay, it was literally a patriotic duty to buy shares even as markets were crashing, okay? And we saw that in 2001 in the US when George Bush stood up and said, I'd invest in stock markets, all that stuff. So, but it's more of a core issue. And you had a lot of people who were bureaucrats and in state-owned companies who had lost 30 to 40 to 50% of their wealth in June of 2015, who felt obligated to continue to buy into markets because it was their patriotic duty to do that. And so, again, this is a very strange thing that most Westerners don't understand, that it is your patriotic duty to buy into falling markets as a Chinese bureaucrat, as a Chinese, say, party member, this sort of thing, okay? And when I say party member, I don't mean some kind of minion. The first time I spoke at the Central Communist Party school in Beijing, there were venture capitalists in the audience. Okay, so party members are across the economic spectrum, right? So it's their patriotic duty to buy, or was in June of 2015 to buy shares. It could at some point become a patriotic duty to buy properties to keep that market up. I'm sure there is pressure right now on people to do that indirectly, but at some point, once kind of the winners are chosen by, say, the Central Committee or the NDRC or whoever, there will likely be a patriotic duty to buy real estate among certain groups, okay, to prop up the value in certain areas or whatever. This sounds strange, but have you guys ever read this book called The Red Tsar? It's a history of Stalin, and it talks about how paranoid and fearful everyone was in the Soviet system. There is almost zero comprehension from Western analysts among how terrified Chinese bureaucrats are when they come into the office every day. Okay, so when I was working in the NDRC, and I always say this when I mention this, I was an advisor to the NDRC for a couple of years. I never collected any money in terms of compensation or expense reimbursement from the NDRC. So I've never been paid by the Chinese government. Okay, but I've been in meetings where Chinese officials have literally started crying. And so, there is terror within the Chinese bureaucracy, and this is not understood. So, Western analysts, Western economists have to understand this. There is no think tank writing about this. There's no journalist talking about this. This has been the way, for years. This is what I observed in 2015. Xi Jinping's power has consolidated even more since then. So I can't imagine the pressure on those bureaucrats right now, politically and bureaucratically, to align with whatever they need to do. And sometimes those or many times those kind of requirements are not verbally communicated. They're informally communicated, those expectations. Well, there's always, like in every political organization, there's always the official line, and then there's the unofficial communication, right? And so there is so much back channel communication within the Chinese government that by the time someone gets to a mid-level bureaucrat, they have to infer a lot from the communication. They really don't know what that communication is saying. Okay. So now imagine if you're a Chinese citizen, right? What you're getting is so many derivatives from what the original intended communication was. You're having to try to figure out how you need to act. Of course, there are the explicit, messages sent out, but there's so much inferred. And you can understand how things like the Cultural Revolution and other things happened when you're so many degrees from power, and that message may be amplified the further you get away from the center.
Today I'm joined, as per usual, by Butthead.
Emil Back in the sauna here. Yeah. Thank you.
I referred to a comment that we received in the inbox, and I think on YouTube as well, from last week's show. Someone watching it writing to us, Beavis and Butthead hosted Michael Cow.